to be Missoula's center of sustainability, and a lot of people, most people in our town know us for our reuse store, and so it's such an exciting opportunity for us every time we get to partner with an artist and partner with Open Air to also showcase how reuse can be not only for the original intention or purpose of that material, but sometimes transformed into something completely different. And as an arts community, really happy to host artists here, but also be able to I don't know, promote reuse and all of the reuse of recycling and repurposing and all of those things through the arts in every possible way. We have many artists. We're so lucky. We keep seeming to get on the schedule to have more open artist residents or open air residents here, and they always, this is, as it starts to wrap up, really feel like they're a fabric of the work that we do here. Nyki's been really exceptional as a part of our team, but also just like in sharing your space and your energy and all of those things. And so we have loved this experience as much or more than any other. It's been really, really wonderful. And goes by way, way, way too quick. So, like Stony said, really want to celebrate this partnership, certainly Nyki's experience, and just wanted to welcome you all to Home ReSource. Yay!
Thank you so much. So, hello, my name is Nyki Fetterman. I am the artist in residence here at Home ReSource, which you just heard. I am going to try really hard not to turn this into like a weird comedy thing, because I'm feeling a little nervous, and I feel like I get up here and my presence is to entertain. And I was saying earlier, I don't know if that's because I was an elementary school teacher, and I just immediately go into hello mode, or if it's because I'm a little nervous. So being here has been extremely amazing. First, I really, really want to thank Stony and everyone from Open Air. This has been such a great experience. It's honestly been very healing being here in Missoula. And I'll kind of talk about that a little bit later in my work and how my work kind of relates to Missoula. But I have fallen so in love with this town, and I'm really, really grateful to have been here. So without further ado, I think that how I'm going to kind of structure this is I'm going to go through kind of some earlier work, ways in which I've kind of carried those things into some kind of more current work, and then my work that I'm doing now, and kind of talk about that. And then if anybody wants to come up at the end, you're all welcome to come and check out my studio space where I've been working. It is up a flight of stairs, so just keep that in mind. But it's a cool little studio, and I have some stuff still kind of in progress, but I'm wrapping up there. All right. So I kind of wanted to start with this, and this is a little body of work that I did in college. And something that's always been kind of special to me about making work, and the way that I kind of describe my work to people, is I always like to say that I'm building a world when I'm making it in my brain. Anytime that I'm making work, I'm kind of thinking about how it all fits together, maybe how it fits in a space, but definitely color, theme. I feel like I'm never making a one-off piece. I'm always thinking of it as at least a body of work in my head, if not something that can be shown in an installational way. Is anybody here not familiar with installation art? When I say installation art, is anybody confused by that?
What's installation art?
Okay, I will tell you. Thank you for asking. So installation art is an art form where you're kind of taking a space and transforming the space into something brand new. My background in college, I ended up in art ed, but I did ceramics and sculpture. And a lot of my sculptural stuff that I did, even if it wasn't an installation, like I said, I was kind of building worlds, kind of figuring out how these sculptures fit within a space. I've never really wanted to just want to hang something on a blank wall. And sometimes you have to as an artist, and you'll see some pieces like that. But yeah. I've also always been like obsessed with materials and materiality in general, getting my hands on a bunch of things. This piece was kind of made to look like some weird hanging meat thing, but it's made out of an old sweatshirt and some wax and some leaves. And so I've always kind of been interested in like how can I take things and kind of transform them into something that feels like something different, that looks like something different. The work that I'm doing here very much looks kind of like the things that it was made out of, but there might be some things that are like a little surprising in there, and we'll talk about that. So again, I'm always like taking little things and putting them together, and things that feel like maybe they shouldn't really fit, but do. This is a piece with some cicada shells. I think this was from 2017. No, this would have been 2016. And the cicadas had just all hatched that summer before I made these pieces. And so these are actually only about this big, these little tiny sculptures that I put on the wall, but I had about 20 of them. And I was kind of focused on not just, there's like some dog hair in there too, and some wool, and some pearls from a necklace that my grandma gave me that broke at one point, little pieces of plaster. But I wanted to turn them into these objects that almost looked like jewelry, or almost, I wanted to really highlight like the beautiful kind of translucence of the cicada shells, kind of in conjunction with these other things. So I'm always about like taking weird stuff and making it look kind of like pretty and polished. And I think that Home ReSource has been like perfect for that. Yeah. So going forward into installation art, this was kind of one of like my first forays into installation art. This was an installation that I did in 2018, and it was made from coconut fiber and wax and polyfill. And I was kind of thinking about how, usually you're filtering things through an air filtration system, but this air filtration system was really broken for a long time in the studio that I had been working in. And I was just like kind of thinking about all of these things that maybe would have collected in there and just kind of like pouring out. And so I made this really gross looking installation, and it's pretty big. It's a little hard to tell kind of like size-wise, but it was probably like the size of this wall behind me. And here's kind of like a close-up of how kind of nasty it looked. Which again, like I'm kind of always wanting to play with this, like, is it pretty or is it ugly? Like, is it beautiful or is it kind of disturbing? And especially at this time, that was kind of like a thing. I've moved away from that a little bit and into some much more like personal work. So some of it is not very ugly in my mind. I think it's quite pretty, but I also thought this was pretty, so who knows? You might, or you might not. Here's a weird little picture of me at a big solo show that I did in 2018. And this is kind of like where I started getting into more like conceptual work. Some of that other work, I guess, that installation was pretty conceptual, kind of thinking about the space, thinking about all of the things that might grow out of it. But this one, I kind of like chose a topic and really dove in and started researching and started kind of making some work that was quite abstract and had like a lot of different materials. But it was very much more like on a wall, kind of in a space. And this work that I made for this show, it's called Neutral Buoyancy. And the show was kind of all about synthetic and synthesized landscapes. So like golf course design. I had gone to Venice, Italy the year before, and so much of the green space in Venice is just like where people could find spaces to shove it in, because it's just like building after building after building, which is also beautiful, but like when you're trying to think of green space, often you're thinking of like this beautiful resting place and this like, kind of like serene, peaceful environment. And then when you start thinking about the ways in which like land architects build golf courses or like build planter boxes that are supposed to look perfectly curated, but it's just hanging on this like
stone cold space, you kind of like start to feel, at least I did, started to feel like, wow, this doesn't really feel right. Like it doesn't feel comfortable to kind of like be viewing this nature where it's just kind of people are putting it. Which is different than like nature reclaiming something, right? Because like you can also see that and see kind of some beauty in that. But this work was a lot more about like the design of spaces. So I looked at some kind of aerial views of some golf courses near my house, and then also some aerial views of some spaces in Venice where I was, and I kind of abstracted them, and I also took synthetic fibers and like wove them into a lot of the stuff, and kind of worked to like, I used a lot of like astroturf in this work. And I'm so sad because I don't have like any good pictures from the show. This is like the only one that I have. But in the very back of the gallery, which is like kind of past this weird wall that I was standing on when I had that goofy little raincoat, I built a putt-putt course so people could play putt-putt golf while they were also viewing my art. And it was kind of like, I don't know, I had constructed these little flags that were all like really like goofy looking, and everything was like kind of bad. It was like, I cut big styrofoam chunks and made like hills and stuff that I just like stapled the astroturf into. People would like try to walk on it and then it would like sink. It was just like a very like funny kind of thing. And I made like, I like floated it above the floor and made this like hole out of an old Cleveland Browns cup. And it was just kind of like, nothing really like worked that well, but people would like try to do it and like the ball wouldn't go very far. And I kind of thought that it was like, I kind of started to play with this thing with like humor a little bit in my artwork and kind of playing with like not taking art too seriously. This was also around the time when one of the first times I started teaching, and I was kind of in this headspace of like trying to figure out like how to make art accessible, and how to make art kind of like interesting for the viewer, especially when it's something that looks like this and it looks very like abstract painting-y. Kind of like, what are some ways in which you can get people kind of also like involved in your artwork? And I think this is like the very first time that I really started thinking about like other people in like the art making process, if that makes sense. You know, being an artist a lot of the time is pretty like, I don't know, I guess it's pretty like self-important in a way, and like starting to kind of think about like the viewer participating kind of became interesting to me. And that kind of filtered into my work later a little bit in the way that like, you know, I would make work that had to do with like other people's stories and kind of like parts of them that like I was a part of. And here's like a close-up of one of the pieces. Anyway, I'll get to that a little bit later, I guess. But I would also like take parts of like the golf course and like, you know, just change them into like a pattern or a shape. I really kind of flattened everything down and changed it from like something that was actually representational into something where you could kind of look and interpret it as golf course, but it was so like abstracted in my brain because I was thinking about like the landscape as like an abstracted landscape being kind of just like played with by people. Anteo, do you have a question?
Quickly, is it mixed media or is it all paint?
Yeah, so it's mixed media. So there are many different kinds of paint, and then there are synthetic, actually recycled plastic yarn, kind of woven into it. There are like little sticky bits of like this one is the one that has like some golf cards up in this area here, and you can't actually see them very well in this photo, but if you were to like get up close to it, you could probably see one of the golf cards just like a tiny bit in there. And yeah, I feel like I'm always just like mixing a bunch of different medias, and maybe that's like part of the kind of like world building thing. I'm feeling like I always want to like get my hands on everything and like see how it can all work together, especially when it feels like it shouldn't. I kind of like doing that. So this was a show that I had in 2021 called Tactile. This was a 3-artist show that I was in, and my work had kind of evolved from the time that you had seen it last into kind of a little bit more like politically driven, also still playing with like some kind of landform shapes and things, because I just kind of liked that look, and also thinking about like synthetic landforms and like this like hyper curated weird political environment that like COVID made kind of possible. Thinking about kind of the ways in which there were like 2 kind of polarized sides to a lot of different things. And this is also when I started kind of bringing like spirituality a little bit and like metaphor kind of into my work. Thinking about things as like, what's something that one person might think is sacred that another person thinks is, completely wrong, or like what is something that one person might think is like the worst thing in the world, but somebody else might hold it really dear, and kind of thinking about this like polarity, basically. And so I have like some weird, I really carried the AstroTurf through. I don't know why, I just like really like that texture and that color. It's so gross, like it's such like a gross material, but I really enjoy it. And so these were made to look like those, kind of cups. I was like thinking of garbage. Like during the pandemic, I went out on a lot of hikes. Like that was all that I pretty much did during 2020. And where I'm from, there is a beautiful national park, the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. And it was just like full of trash. It was like full of people, which made it full of trash. And like nobody goes there anymore, and like nobody went there before. But people did during the pandemic, and it was like very overcrowded. And in fact, Steve and I were kind of talking about like the overcrowding of parks the other day, and how that's kind of an interesting issue that y'all have here as well, kind of the overcrowding of parks. So I was kind of thinking about that with this piece. And then up close, you can't see them, but I made these like tiny little golden glittery bugs that are like crawling on that spilled slushy and stuff. And I liked how it looked. I also had like a lot of things about kind of like eating well, thinking about this idea of like eating well and like eating fruit, and how like fruit kind of traditionally in like Renaissance painting, or even like painting from like the Netherlands, like those, I can't remember what time period that is, but like fruits and flowers and all of this like abundance. And I was kind of thinking of abundance, and I was also kind of thinking of like that political landscape right around the time of the pandemic, and kind of thinking about like, I don't know, just kind of like what it might mean to like sink your teeth into some fruit at that time, and like kind of how charged that could be, and also how fruit is beautiful and sacred, and like a lot of the time is used as like fertility imagery in a lot of artwork, and like there is this like abundance and beauty and all of that, and kind of like that juxtaposition of things. I also did a lot of work with cows. Here I am next to one of my fiber pieces, and I was thinking about like cows and like how they produce a lot of things that we use, be it like gelatin, or milk, or food if you eat meat, or just pretty much like cows are like this symbol. And I'm from the Midwest, where there are like, let me tell you, there are many cows there. And so just kind of thinking about like, I'm driving to like all these parks, everything is really beautiful, and then there are like these dairy farms everywhere, and there are like these cows just being like, I don't know, you know, just like shuttled through things, and everybody is at home, so they're all cooking and they're all like consuming these cows. And also thinking of the cow as like kind of like something that's sacred in some cultures, and thinking of the cow as like this, you know, kind of like fertility symbol within itself. And just kind of, I feel like I was like playing with that tension of the time with this work. And I also, around this time, started bringing in poetry to my work. I've written poetry like my whole adult life. I've written poetry probably since middle school, but I don't want to talk about that poetry. And I feel like kind of starting to bring like words into work, and starting to, you know, I like that in making art, you can kind of, the viewer can put their own story into it, but also if you're like kind of telling them a story with words, like how do those words kind of get like interpreted well or misinterpreted, and like what does that mean to kind of the viewer? And I've really carried words through into my work, as you'll see in a little bit. But this was kind of coming out of, I think this was 2022, and so it says, there is resilience here, there is hope here, to pick your battles is power. And it was kind of like going through, I was kind of going through some personal stuff, and also kind of relating it to like that kind of political landscape of work that I had been coming from before, and kind of thinking about those things and using some symbolism in there. This piece was actually stolen, so if anybody ever sees it around Montana, they won't. Maybe, I don't know where it is. It's somewhere in the world. It was stolen from a bar near my house where they asked if they could put it on the wall. So like, they hung it there, and it was there. Like, I went there for a drink one time, and I was like, hey, my art is in this place. And they have like a big art collection in that bar. It's like a cute little bar. And then one day I went there and I was like, hey, so like I have this piece, and they were like, oh, I don't know where that is. And I was like, interesting. They were like expanding to the upstairs, so I didn't really think about it much. And then somebody texted me and was like, do you know your piece was stolen from Bar Lucci? And I was like, what? And so it's never been found. So just be on the lookout, I guess, for this, like, I don't know who wants it. It's like 4 feet tall. It's a really big painting. And also, like, how did they take it? I don't know. But it's also like a little bit charming, and like it feels a little good that somebody like wanted my art so much they stole it, I guess. I'm not sure. I don't know how to think about it, but I really like this piece and I would like it back. Okay. So that kind of brings me to my most recent work. And this most recent work is a little bit of a deviation from kind of my work before. It's very personal work and has a lot to do with these like tiny little moments of care. And it's called Mysticism Between. That's what the show is called. But I am also looking at it, there are some kind of like political references in this work too. I feel like I'm always like, I've kind of been making those and like kind of transitioning out of it, but still a little bit. So this work, in this work, I really started working with like kind of memorializing like little important things. And so whether it was like something that someone had said to me, or like an act that I had done for someone, or an act that someone had done for me, kind of thinking about it and turning it from just this everyday interaction or everyday thing that I witnessed into this kind of like sacred meditation on kind of like the beauty and the complexity in specific situations. And I also have a lot of work here that's kind of celebrating like queerness and queer culture and kind of interactions that I've had like within the queer community back home, which has kind of become like a really large part. I mean, I feel like I've like really found a community in the last few years in this beautiful queer community in my town. And so kind of like on the metaphorical end of things, I wanted to highlight these snakes. I wanted to make these snakes out of something that was like touchable and inviting and exciting, and kind of invite people. This is another one where I really wanted the viewer to like come up and like pet these snakes and like really like think about it. 'Cause snakes for people have this like really, really negative connotation. You know, we think about snakes as far back as like biblical times, as like these deceptive, like scary characters that are always like, you know, I don't know, doing seedy things, like slithering around on the ground, and like you don't want to be around them, you know. But I was thinking about snakes in kind of a different way, and I started thinking about, I had heard this Greek myth about someone named Asclepius. I can never say his name perfectly, but in the myth, he became a healer of people because he was ill, and these snakes like slithered up his body, and as they slithered up his body, they healed him, and then they licked the inside of his ears and gave him the power to say and touch, say things and touch people in a way that could heal them. And so I kind of was thinking about the snake as this thing that like we always think of as something that has a really negative connotation, but actually like what if it was warm and inviting, and what if like some of the most like insidious parts of life were also things that you can find like beauty and kind of comfort and rest in. And so this is kind of something that I've carried through into the work that I'm making here at Home Resource. Yeah, the snakes, so the medical staff is not, like the one that doctors use, is not the same as EMS workers, but the EMS worker staff with the snakes, if you look at them you can see the difference, is actually because of this Greek myth. So a little interesting bit of history for you there. This piece here, I'm not really going to go too deep into like why I made it or like what it's about or how it was made or anything like that, but I did just kind of want to show you that like I am super interested in that kind of materiality, and in kind of, you know, all of these materials kind of like being really conflicting things that like you would never think to put together, but just like work. And kind of how I think that it can be kind of seen in this piece, like that it's a theme through work all the way from like the very first stuff I showed you to now, where I'm always kind of trying to do that. This piece was a piece about one of my best friends passed away in May 2022 of cancer, and this was a place where I really brought my writing into the work. And I made like a poem about it, and it was like on the didactic, and then there's a lot of writing in the work. But I kind of was thinking about all of these things where we would like talk, like we would just be together and just talk all the time. And we'd sit at this place called Warden's Woods, which is about like an hour from my house. And it's like, it's so bad. There are these crude, horrible sculptures in the woods that some guy in the 1800s just like carved out of all the sandstone there. And so they've been like overtaken by moss, and like they're really, the proportions are really poorly executed, and like all of these like human forms are only like 4 feet tall, and it's just like, it's a little like weird to look at, and there's like a sphinx in the middle of the woods, and you like kind of like walk around the woods and just find these bizarre kind of crude sculptures, and so like we would always sit on these ledges there, and we'd go there and we'd like eat snacks and just talk about things and ride our bikes everywhere. And this was like while he was actively dying, and just kind of thinking about like all of those conversations, and wanted to kind of like memorialize them and hold them sacred, but also kind of think about like the really dark side of that. Right before he was diagnosed, he had gotten into college again. He didn't finish the first time around, and he like couldn't go because he kind of had to choose between like paying for, his care or paying for furthering his education. Just kind of like thinking about that and wanting to like honor him and like the really beautiful times we had, and also highlight the fact that like there is this rather like horrible part of that, and that kind of like bad side of that. And kind of, I guess, the meaning of that is kind of trying to hold it all together and just like figure out like when you're holding all of those things, like what parts are becoming the most important for you in your mind, I guess. Yeah, so this is when I started getting into really personal work. And I'll play a little animation I made for that show also about what it means to care. This is about 1.5 minutes long, and then I will go into what it means to care and how I kind of transition that into my work that I'm making here at Home Resource, wrap it up with materials, and then open the floor for questions. So this has no sound, so it's just gonna be real quiet. Okay, maybe. But yeah, thinking about what it means to care. To care is to fold the clothes while dad sleeps on the couch. Thinking about what it means to care. Care is learning to cook for yourself. To care is to heat the cinnamon rolls for 14 seconds like you taught me to. It's about my grandpa. To care is to keep informing the world of the horrors of genocide even after your home and office have been destroyed. Hey everyone, this is Bisan from Gaza. I'm still alive. To care is to write a note to someone who you cherish, letting them know just how much, just so you know, I read it every day. Oh, every time I need strength, but I do read that note every day. To care is to cry with your students during a lockdown drill while giving them the only answers you can give honestly. What if someone broke the lock? What would you do? I would do everything I could to keep you safe. Care is a shell placed amongst rocks. Sorry, that was I feel like that lockdown one, like, even like when I watch my own animation, I feel like I get kind of worked up about that. And I had like some teachers go through the show, and they would like come out and be like, nope. Like, yep. So yeah, I feel like I just like bring kind of care into a lot of the work that I've been doing. Care and intentionality, and kind of thinking about things that are maybe a bit hard to think about, and kind of memorializing them. So working here at Home Resource, I started working on, I knew this might get tricky. Here we go. I didn't walk over here. When we were testing the length of everything, I walked over there, but I didn't think about how I would have to like grab my sculptures and show them to you. So this sculpture here, I wanted to make these kind of like little altar shelves, places where you could kind of like rest. Let me set that down because it's kind of heavy. Where you could kind of like rest and kind of almost look at them as like a little meditative object. And so this one here, I think it transitions well from the animation into this, because this piece is about quitting teaching. So I quit teaching in May 2023, which was as I had started kind of a little bit making the work for this show. It was for a residency that I had in November of 2023, but it was an in-town residency, so I could kind of like get a jump on it. And so I wanted to make a piece about having quit teaching. And while I was here at Home Resource, I was really thinking about this altar shelf idea and kind of what that means, and like how to execute that. And Mike Lassard, we were out in the yard during our tour, and he was like, he's the shop guy here, and he was like, if you want some granite, work with some granite, because he was like really trying to push the granite. And I just kind of laughed, and I was like, I will. Okay. And I was kind of thinking about granite as like, you know, or stone in general, like this is quartz. There's granite here. But thinking about stone in general as like something that's been used in a lot of sacred spaces. And also thinking about it as this thing that's kind of like heavy and weighty and cold, and kind of like what that means for some of these little things I'm memorializing. So anyway, it's kind of self-explanatory. It has these like little lambs here. I think of those as all my little baby students, and the lambs are from some contact paper that I found in the art room, and I just cut them out with a little X-Acto and put them on there. And there's a burnt out candle, which like when I'm saying that out loud, I'm like, there's this burnt out candle. I was so burnt out on teaching. It sounds very like cliche, but it doesn't feel cliche to me, because I think anyone who is taught in any capacity can maybe like think about that and I don't know, kind of understand the burnt out candle. So anyway, my tie into Montana with all of this is that I really, coming to Montana, I came from this place of quitting teaching. I came from this place of like some pretty heavy stuff going on in like my personal life. I am currently like coming out of a breakup. There's a lot that's happening in my current life. And I had kind of been thinking about this time to be in Montana as this time to like really rest and to really reflect and to really kind of like let this experience here and all of the beauty kind of surrounding me like carry me into kind of like my next chapter of life and like what it means to kind of like be myself. This is like the first time I've ever been alone for a month, pretty much like my whole life. And so like thinking about it as this really like solitary space to make work and this really important place to make work from. And so anyway, I wanted to use kind of like the landforms as kind of a guide for like this beautiful kind of way to cradle me here. This piece here is kind of about like the tension of like relationships. And so you have this thing that's kind of like tethering people, forms, however you want to view this, kind of together, and what it means when sometimes lines get like crossed a little bit. So depending on how you look at this, and I really encourage everybody to come up and kind of look at these. But like as you're looking at it from every different angle, there's kind of something. And I wrote a poem about that one.
It bounces.
You know, Kelly, I said I wouldn't. I said nothing like this would happen. But, yeah, so there's a poem that goes with this one here that I'll read, and then I'll kind of talk about the last one. And then we'll go upstairs or ask questions. Ask all the questions you want. I'm not doing too bad. It's only 4:45. This is great because I feel like I've been talking for my whole life. Awesome. Okay. When I looked out and I saw those blue mountains and three crows, I wondered, are they friend or are they foe? Would one pick at the others as they tried to fly? Or were they all bringing one another little gifts? Were two vying for the attention of the one? Or were they all simply sharing their sweetness? Were all three learning how to fly together in a flock, with just enough space between them? Were they separate in their flights, merely flying too close together, too close to sun peeking through? Were they just right, two ahead, one lagging just behind, but apart while apart? And would they be okay no matter why they grouped, and no matter for how long? Would they learn to move with the wind. So that's that kind of like goes with this piece. And these aren't crows, they're ducks, but it's the best I got here at Home Resource. We have, maybe they're geese. I'm pretty sure they're ducks. It's interpretive. It's an artist rendering of some animals from some wallpaper. Yeah, okay. And then this piece here, I actually finished like yesterday. And this one here, as I told you, I'm kind of like going through a breakup and also like trying to be very respectful while also making work about that kind of situation. And so I had like started this piece and it was a little different and had posted it online, and it was not it was viewed in a way that was not how I intended it to be viewed, but it was kind of contentious, and so I ended up changing the piece, which felt in a way like censorship and also felt in a way like rising above and respecting. And so I changed it into saying, I made myself smaller and smaller and smaller. I'll grow myself taller and taller and taller. I made myself smaller and smaller and smaller. I'll grow myself taller and taller, and still I'll lead with love. I've only ever led with love. I did it when I carved in words, and when I covered them, and now I'll grow myself taller in it, erasing the parts that feel like pain, and bolding the parts I know to be true. I'm good here. The air is clear, my head is clear. I can breathe, and I think I know who I am now, but I think I always have. I led with love. I will not shrink away from that, and I'll grow taller and taller and taller. Despite it all, I'm so soft, and I won't harden. And I think that's kind of like what this work is about. This is a really vulnerable artist talk. Thank you for, thanks for hanging out. Please ask as many questions as you'd like. What's up?
I just wanted to mention about the stolen cow piece. That when I was looking at it, it looked like a tarot card, and it just made me. That's just what it reminded me of, and it just made me wonder if, since you work with so many different materials, like if you have that's something you explore, like sort of the game or the card deck or like these sort of other things.
So I was kind of inspired in that piece by some kind of like, I also make tattoo flash. I also like paint for tattoos, and I was kind of like thinking of it more in like that way. Kind of thinking about like these kind of simple forms that you might do in like traditional tattooing a little bit. Also kind of thinking of like folk art, but I think in that like tarot cards are kind of reminiscent of some, like, you know, like the Rider-Waite deck or something, is kind of reminiscent of some things that could be pretty easily translatable into tattoos, and also feels a little like folk arty, or like, I don't know. Yeah, so in a way, kind of. I guess also like I am approaching a lot of my work from like a little bit of like a spiritual kind of space in my mind and in my heart, and I think maybe doing that, it could fall in line with tarot cards. So yes, yeah, definitely. I was thinking about that the whole time. What's up?
Not to contradict something you said, but I just want to note that that candle over there is not fully burnt out. Just as far as technically speaking, it's still got a ways to go, which to me suggests that I've heard you kind of speak from a place of like symbolism and really thinking about materiality of things, but also representation of things, like how we think of them culturally and, you know, across different cultures. It seems like you're thinking about objects on kind of maybe multiple levels, and I'm just noting maybe the subliminal text in that piece is there's still something left there.
I only taught consistently for 2 years before I quit, and that was an intentional choice, yeah. I felt like it was at the very, very beginning of something. Yeah. The other candle is one I keep lighting.
I love the burn
And
on
then
that piece.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then it goes out. Yeah, there was a note that was kind of part of another piece that ended up becoming collateral in the making of this one.
I think what's nice about that, Nyki, is like the kind of, it seems like these pieces are conversations with yourself. And so that layer of that process is like part of the conversation, how you're kind of working and unworking and working and unworking, and when that shows up on that material plane is got some resonance to it.
Thank you. Yeah, they are definitely me working through things and talking to myself. Yeah.
Why did you transition away from using like really saturated colors in your earlier work?
So actually, that really saturated color palette of the work that kind of went with this animation is from just this year and last year, so 2023 to very early 2024. I think the last piece I finished for that show was like January 2nd. In fact, I know. And I love hyper-saturated colors. I'm currently in a place right now where like super saturated colors are not really like ringing true with kind of like the contemplative space that I've kind of been working in. And also a lot of these materials here just have this really rich, beautiful like texture and color relationship, even though they're like a lot more muted. And I kind of have like wanted to really like highlight that a little bit. I think this particular residency at Home ReSource is like all about the materials that you can kind of find here. And so you'll see if you come up to my studio that I did have like sketches for things before I got here, but some of the things I just like couldn't have the materials for. And then things have also like changed since I've been here, just emotionally while working on things. And yeah, it's kind of like an intentional thing, but also I really did want to like highlight the materials that I was working with. This piece does have like some saturation in those kind of like primary colors, kind of referencing like teaching and like children and things that might be kind of enticing to them. You know, like I imagine a child would probably gravitate toward this one first. I'm not sure. I think when you walked up here, I actually did see a gravitation toward this piece. Yeah, and so I've seen it in action now, and I know for sure. Yeah. Any other questions?
You know, the video and listening to you talk, I mean, you're really revealing a lot of emotional vulnerability, I guess. And I want to thank you for that. And, you know, not a lot of artists can do that. And I think it's really wonderful, and thank you for your courage to do that. And I had one other comment.
Yeah.
20 years ago, I wrote this letter to Golf Digest.
I cannot wait.
And,
I can't wait.
it was just suggesting that in 18 holes, it's a missed opportunity not to put public sculpture on public golf courses. And at every tee off, can't you imagine having public sculpture at all 18 holes?
I sure can, and I can also think about, you know, like the money
They
that could
never
go to
published
artists.
it. And my friend, who was an author here in County, is going, they're never going to publish that. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. But I did fire off a letter. It's horrible, you know?
Yeah.
They need to have some. I could see Tiger Woods, you know, teeing off next to the Venus de Milo, you know? It'd be kind of cool. Or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
But anyway, just wanted to mention that I've been inspired by that, rethinking the whole golf thing.
Yes, absolutely. Just let it light that fire again. Just write that letter a second time around. Maybe I am gonna get a job working for Golf Diner just for fun, just for you.
I never got a response or anything like that. Anyway, it's just that.
Foolish on their part,
Yeah,
and a
it's
tragedy for sure.
Anyway, thank you for,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you for your comment. That really means a lot. Any other questions?
I was just wondering what your cow fiber piece was, how it was made.
Oh, so I do rug tufting with a machine, and I also, in it, I had these like upholstery needles. I usually back the pieces with a heavy duty felt, but I knew that one wouldn't be for the floor. And so I backed it with canvas, and I used these extremely heavy upholstery needles to sew in those extremely long pieces. And then I would like knot them off in certain points and kind of vary the height of each one.
So Nyki, do you, in your planning ahead after you leave the residency, do you feel like you'll be continuing to work similarly to the body of work that you've developed here, and to sort of continue on, or do you have what directions are you thinking of going into?
That's a really, really great question, and something that I've also been kind of wondering for myself and thinking about a lot. I don't have access to a wood shop. I don't have access to a studio where I could probably make this work safely. I don't have that. But I haven't worked with wood since college, and working with it again has really made me want to. So I might try to find a space to do that. I don't know. It's kind of funny because I have a home studio and I feel really scrappy back home, and I'm always just kind of trying to like make stuff out of what I have and what I can find places and put it together in a way that, like, you know, where if I need ventilation, I just go on my deck. So I'm not 100% sure, but I think this body of work is not fully realized yet, and I'm feeling a little sad to kind of like be putting a pin in it, because it feels like it's been special to make. So I'd like to, but I don't know what that looks like, and I can't really like. This is going to be expensive enough to ship, so I can't ship back granite. There's just no way. Not more than I've already used. All right. If anyone wants to come to the studio, I don't have like a ton to show you, but you're welcome to see the space that I've worked in, and kind of just like I can show you like some stuff that I'm working on as I'm wrapping up here. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming.